Instagram dead for artists? That's the question that I'm going to be addressing in this video. How do we actually navigate the crazy world of social media, and how do we deal with Instagram as a whole, and what can we do instead of chasing after the algorithm? As someone who has over 74,000 followers on Instagram, I feel like it means absolutely nothing. And just to give you an example, my typical reel will actually reach right around 2,000 people. Now, you might say 2,000 people, that's pretty amazing. And I will admit that it's not bad, right? I'm not here to complain about Instagram. And I do want to say that if it wasn't for Instagram, I wouldn't have the business that I have now. I am grateful for the customers that I've found over the years, but when you have 74,000 followers, having only 2,000 of them see my actual posts can be a little bit frustrating. Now, of course, sometimes, yes, I have posts that go viral, that have a farther reach, and yes, that is exciting. But somewhere around maybe like a year ago, I actually not only stopped growing on Instagram, I started losing followers. And I know that I'm not alone in this matter. And I know that so many artists right now are feeling completely defeated by Instagram. And I get it. There have been days where I have felt like giving up and just leaving Instagram. And while I, like to, think about those things and, fantasize about leaving Instagram, it's probably not going to happen. But here, I want to talk about other ways to build your business so that you're not just dependent on one platform. So I know so many artists who are frustrated. They, you post your art, you pour your heart into your captions, and, you spend all of this time, especially those of us who learned how to make reels, right? Back in the day. Oh, and do you remember when you used to post, when reels first started, if you posted reels, like there was a period of time when reels were new where I was growing like 100 new followers every single day. That was insane. But, the problem is that the algorithm is constantly changing over and over again. And I think that is my biggest frustration, right? I am one of those people who like to learn things, right? And I have spent a lot of time teaching myself how to make reels, teaching myself, how to make carousels, putting in all of this time and yet not seeing much of a return for it, right? And what is the point of building your following and your Instagram account when it's not actually going to be rewarded if you have more followers, right? And so there just came a point in time within the last year where I have kind of started to switch gears and pivot in my social media strategy. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I will say that, I think for me, the biggest turning point was actually just recently when they started doing trial reels. And I was in this place where, I even took a few classes on how to utilize trial reels. And I do think that there is still the capacity and the ability to grow on Instagram right now. I don't think it's impossible. My problem is that I don't feel like it's sustainable for me. And that's one of the things that I've really had to come to terms with in the last year, in that, do I really want to, spend a couple hours every week making trial reels only to get my account to grow again? And if I do that, what is going to actually be the payoff? Will those people actually convert into customers? And that's kind of where I decided that, maybe I don't want to spend so much of my energy trying to grow on a platform that just doesn't seem stable. And part of that is because they're constantly changing things, right? And so, yeah, like the algorithm is always changing. And so I've just been in this place where I've just been fed up. So if that's how you're feeling, I just want you to know that you're not alone. Okay. So here's the truth. Instagram may not be dead, but it's just not what it used to be, right? And I think that, especially for a lot of these artists that, it's been in my feed over and over again, right? That Instagram is changing. And if you want to see my posts, you need to, make this setting, whatever. And I almost started laughing when I kept seeing those posts, because it's like, Instagram has been changing, and it's probably going to continue to change. And while I'm not, going to completely give up my account, I'm just choosing to spend a lot more of my time and energy on other social platforms that feel more sustainable and like I'm building something a little bit more long-term as opposed to instant, right? And so, I just want to say, like, the other thing is that Instagram used to be my primary way to gather customers, right? And I used to consider it like my home platform. And now I just feel like it's maybe transitioning from that, right? And like I said, I'm not completely giving up on it, because I do have some customers that I interact with, and I have a community that I've built, but I'm not putting all of my eggs in that one basket, right? I am expanding to YouTube, to Pinterest, and I am finding other ways to reach my ideal customer that feels more steady and less instant. And I think that's the other piece that's gotten me a little bit fed up, is just that I really want to look for my ideal customer on Instagram? Is my ideal customer going to find me on Instagram, right? And that's one of the reasons why I've chosen to build on here on YouTube, is because I feel like my customer is searching on YouTube for help in their business. And the people who watch my YouTube videos are going to more likely be my ideal customer than someone who watches 30 seconds of a reel. Not only that, I am somewhat fed up with the what is Instagram even doing to our brains, right? And that's just a random side note, because, so much of, our time spent on social media has created these extremely short attention spans. And I'm tired of having to get people's attention within the first 30 seconds or not even 30 seconds, 3 seconds, right? 3 seconds of a video, and they decide whether or not they want to watch. And so to me, it just has become not the end all for my business. I want to talk about how artists can adapt, expand beyond Instagram, and start building something that actually lasts. And I just want to take a minute to speak to that, because I think this is why I have started to become so incredibly frustrated with Instagram, is the fact that we have this tiny little window of time where if we have created the perfect reel with the most enticing hook and we post it at the right time, we have this small little window where either the algorithm picks up a reel and shows it to even just our followers, right? Or doesn't. And so because of that, it feels incredibly frustrating, especially for those of us who have spent a lot of time building up our following and cultivating a relationship with our followers there. And so I can't tell you how frustrating it is to be in the shoes of having spent a lot of time building my account to 74,000 followers and not have it actually mean anything. So many of us are coming up against this frustration, and it's actually been going on for a while now. And I think it's only going to continue to happen as Instagram has made the decision to become more of an interest-based driven platform, right? And not that YouTube and other platforms aren't, but it has gotten to the point where Instagram is really modeling their platform after TikTok, right? And so my struggle with Instagram is the fact that it's so fleeting and that you have this small window, and yet people aren't normally going and looking at all of your old content, right? And so, Instagram reels and videos are not necessarily something that lasts a long time, whereas I have just been wanting to build on a platform that builds on my posts and my videos. So platforms like YouTube and even Substack for artists and Pinterest are great places to sort of start diversifying your audience and meeting your audience in a better capacity. And then the most important part is to start building your email list. And I wish that I had done that a lot sooner than later, because when my posts were being shown to the majority of my followers, if I had a stronger lead magnet at the time, and if I was working on my email list, let's say back in 2020, when I was getting a lot of interaction on my Instagram, I would have probably 4 or 5 times the amount of names and email addresses on my email list right now. And so your email list is the only platform that you can actually own yourself. And so it's the ultimate place to send all of your followers and your audience. Okay, so Instagram really used to be, and this is the problem with Instagram right now, Instagram used to be such a beautiful place for artists. We could share our process, our paintings, our stories, and really connect directly with collectors, with buyers, with people who are interested in having a conversation about art. And we could also have great conversations with other creatives. But now it just feels like the rules keep changing every few months, right? I don't know about you, but it's not necessarily that I'm not willing to learn. It's just the fact that as soon as I learn one thing, then they change something again. And I just, for one, am getting tired of chasing the algorithm. I'm getting tired of chasing, okay, what's in this week? What do I need to do this week, right? So, those of us who have been on there for a while, we've experienced, the algorithm pushing reels, and then all of a sudden it pushes carousels, and then it's pushing saves, and then, then we start all over again, right? Just recently they were telling us to only post one story, and then they just switched it again so that, they're going to push more than one story. And so it just has gotten exhausting for me. And I would rather build somewhere where I am sure that what I'm building is actually there for a sustainable period of time, right? I personally don't feel like I am able to serve my audience in the best capacity over on Instagram. Oh, and I will say one of the biggest shifts that I felt, if I'm being completely honest, so I haven't really grown on Instagram for the last year. In fact, I've been losing followers. That's just part of, being on Instagram. But usually if I make the decision to be more consistent, then I've been able to grow. And so this last year was the first time where I have made the decision to be consistent and not grown and actually lost people. And so I think that just gives you a better idea of how much things have been shifting. And I am the type of person who likes to keep things positive. And so I fought for the longest time to say anything negative about Instagram because I thought that if I could just be more consistent, if I could change my messaging, if I could have better hooks, then I would continue to grow. But it just really wasn't adding up for me. And I finally had to have a come to Jesus moment where I just had to say, you know what? This is maybe not the best place for me. And I have to say that, I haven't given up completely on posting there, but I am really doing much more of my work here on YouTube. And so to me, having more stability in my business means that I get to show up in a way that is more intentional and also in a way that serves my people better and stronger, which is why I'm here. Instagram is just not the same anymore, and I'm sure all of you have felt that in some capacity. And so I've already explained some of these reasons, but this is why it's actually risky to rely on Instagram alone in this day and age. So if Instagram disappeared tomorrow, would you still have a way to connect with your collectors, your students, if you're a course creator, or your fans in any capacity? Would you have a way to get in touch with those people? When you build everything dependent on one platform, on a platform actually that you don't own, you're basically building your art business on rented land, okay? You could potentially, and people have it happen all the time, they get their accounts hacked and they lose their following, and therefore they lose their business. Now that's a scary thing to think about. You could potentially lose your audience at any given moment. This is actually why diversifying your platforms is no longer optional, it's essential. And you want to create an ecosystem that supports your art business, not just one single outlet. Okay, so in a minute, we're going to talk about where to go instead. And what I want to clarify before I go into this, when I'm talking about diversifying your platforms, what I don't want you to do is burn out, okay? And this is what I was feeling from Instagram. I was getting so incredibly burnt out, making all of this content and not having it actually mean anything to my business. I mean, I would try to get people into my lead magnet programs, and it was all dependent on whether or not a video got to my audience or not. And I can't tell you how frustrating that is, right? So what I don't want you to do or to hear from this video is I have to be on every platform and go start a TikTok and start a YouTube and start a LinkedIn and start a Substack and do all the things all at once, because that's a recipe for disaster for you. I think that you should start in strategic ways. I think YouTube is probably the number one platform for artists to grow. And especially if you are a course creator or you want to teach in any capacity, YouTube is the number one platform. I think I saw the other day that YouTube has become the number one streaming service above Netflix or anything else that people are watching. And so people are consuming YouTube in the same way that they used to watch movies or TV shows. And so we have such a unique experience now. One of the things that I've heard, because I've been talking about this with my audience on Instagram actually, is, well, what if I don't want to teach? Should I still be on YouTube? And I think yes. I think that you can still have a YouTube channel even if you don't want to teach art or art technique, but that you have to find the interest. So let's say you want to have a YouTube channel to sell your art. You could potentially have a channel where you are meeting the needs of your ideal customer. So let's say that your ideal customer is a gardener, right? Because you paint flowers, or your ideal customer is an outdoors person, right? So what you're wanting to do is find some overlapping interests and make content specific to that person, okay? And so you have to find those elements of your art, really find clarity around who your ideal customer is, what are their hobbies, their interests, their style. What kind of videos are they searching for? Do they want to know how to style art on their wall? Do they have a specific kind of home? Lifestyle vlogging is huge right now. And as artists, we do this so well. We are artists. And so many artists that I meet, it's almost like their life is art. And so if you can make a lifestyle art channel where maybe you share recipes for cooking and maybe you arrange flowers and, you know, whatever it is that your ideal customer is interested in. I talked to one gal on Instagram whose art is centered around the theme of plants and the healing power of plants and plants as medicine. And so for her, she could make videos on YouTube that are all about the healing power of plants and, you know, how she uses herbs to self-heal and all of those things, making content directed towards her ideal customer would then attract those buyers to her art. And then she could also talk about her art practice and why she paints the plants and the flowers, talk about her art story and her journey, because she had cancer, and so she's healed from cancer. And so it's like you have to look for those things that your particular customer would be looking for on YouTube. So what I love about YouTube is that it's a discovery platform. It's a search engine, right? People are actively searching for what it is that you do, right? They're looking for art inspiration, for painting videos, for tutorials, and they're looking for creative conversations, right? Maybe your ideal customer is a thrifter, and so you're making thrifting haul videos. Think outside of the box, you guys. I think YouTube is the most untapped of the social media platforms, and I get it because it's overwhelming, but it potentially could bring you so much more business to your art. Okay, so moving along, and let's just talk about long form content. If someone watches one of my YouTube videos, they trust me more, right? They're more likely to sign up for my free programs, and they're more likely to sign up for a paid course if they know, like, and trust me, okay? And also, you can have a video that you posted 2 years ago that also goes viral. Or you might have a viral video and then people go back and watch all of your older content. It's seriously one of the best platforms for artists to grow on. The other thing that I've never really looked into, but is something that you might consider, I saw an artist who was actually creating videos that were screensavers, and it was just an image of their painting. And so and I don't fully know how you have to set that up for the algorithm not to go bonkers, right? And or how you like turn the ads off on that particular type of content, because having a screensaver of your art is a great idea, but what if the ads start playing in the middle of the video? I don't think people would as easily use it, so you would make sure that you had to turn off AdSense, and I'm not entirely sure how to do that myself. But what a great way to serve your people. They get to play your video of their favorite painting of yours, and it's sitting on their TV, so that's another thing that you might consider looking into. Personally, I haven't looked at it yet, but I've thought about it, and it might be something to build your rapport with your audience. Okay, so yes, it's in a nutshell, I just want to say that YouTube is so much better for longevity and for building something that actually lasts. Whereas I feel like YouTube, I'm building on solid foundation, whereas Instagram is shifting sand and it's always changing. Okay, so Substack. I love Substack. I haven't started diving into Substack, but if you are a writer and you like to write and share your art and process, then you need to be on Substack. One, you can monetize, and you can have different levels and different tiers of memberships on Substack. And it's, from what I understand, it's a much better platform for connection with your audience. And so if you were thinking about like starting a magazine and that's like your thing, having like almost like article how-to video, like text with photographs of how-to stuff, oh my gosh, you should get on Substack like yesterday. Because one, again, you can monetize. Two, I think it's much more friendly for the people who show up to Substack are there to read your specific content and the people who they follow. So yes, Substack is amazing for storytelling. It's basically a modern version of a blog mixed with a newsletter. You can share your creative process, reflections, and even use it to nurture collectors or students who want to hear more from you. Okay, so the last social media platform I want to talk about is Pinterest. And Pinterest is one of those that takes on a life of its own. I have people who have pinned my art and I've never even seen it, right? And so pins will go on and spread whether you want them to or not. I don't know if that's good or bad, but Pinterest is a slow burn, but it's also very powerful. It's a visual search engine where people are already looking for art, home decor, and inspiration. And your art can live there for months or even years, bringing new eyes to your website or your shop. The important thing about Pinterest is to create your own pins. And if you're wanting to do that, you should probably, make a few each day or at least one a day. And within your pin, you want to make sure that there's a call to actions, that you're getting people onto your newsletter, onto your linking to your shop where they can buy your art, and all of those things. And you can get even more focused on who your ideal customer is or create content based around that, kind of like what we were talking about, but for YouTube, but in a more visual sense, right? So if you're wanting to attract, eclectic plant lovers to buy your art, right? Then you make content based around that and show your art styled in the type of home that your ideal customer is most drawn to, right? And so on Pinterest, I think it's much more powerful. YouTube is about powerful ideas, but Pinterest is about powerful images. And so if you're a much more visual person and you like to communicate in a much more visual way, as opposed to talking to the camera like on YouTube, then you would maybe want to focus on Pinterest. Just know that it does take time to build interaction, but it is really good for diversifying your following. And sometimes I find artists on Pinterest and then go follow them on Instagram. And I've even had a few people find me on Pinterest. So you really just never know. The only thing about Pinterest is I haven't quite mastered it in the sense of knowing really what it's actually doing for my business, right? I don't have any way to track that yet. So I probably need to get more dialed into the metrics and how it works. Okay, but if you want to grow on Pinterest, there's probably a million, classes or even YouTube videos that you can watch here to find out more about how to utilize Pinterest for your business. So lastly, let's just talk about the most important platform that you actually own, and that is your email list. Out of everything that you can build, YouTube, Pinterest, Substack, Instagram, TikTok, what are some of the other platforms? LinkedIn. Your email list is your most valuable asset as an artist. If you are looking to sell your art and you don't have a collector's list, I beg you to start right now. Why? Because you actually own your email list. And I can't tell you, I think that email is probably one of the best places for you to connect with your audience. And it's something, your email list actually lets you speak directly to your collectors and supporters without fighting an algorithm. How many of us are so sick of algorithms, right? So you can invite them to shop your new collections, join your courses, or simply stay connected with your journey and what's new in your life. I want you to think of your email list as your creative garden, the place where you can actually nurture real relationships with people who already love your work. Now, the only downside of email lists is maybe there's not as much two-way conversations, but you can always invite people on your email list to go watch your latest YouTube or to go watch your latest reel and comment on your whatever, that your story that you're talking about. You can invite a conversation through email, and it literally is the best place for you to have the peace of mind to know that you're not going to lose touch with all of those valuable customers. So what would I recommend in terms of where do you start, right? So after listening to me talk, I think it's important for you to actually just pick one new platform and one that gets you excited. Like I said before, don't go out and try to start all of them tomorrow, okay? Second, I think it's important to create your own funnels, okay? And a funnel is just a system through which you invite your ideal customer into a conversation to get to know you better. And it usually starts on social media where you have a call to action. And that call to action eventually leads your ideal customer to your email list, right? And after going to your email list, they might then sign up for a free course, a free video, a free print download. They might then be able to get to know you on a deeper level through the series of emails that you send out where you tell your story, tell more about your process and who you are, and then eventually how and where to buy your art and or sign up for your classes. And then third, I think you have to actually give yourself permission to play, right? And I know that some of us have just gotten so frustrated with Instagram and with all algorithms, all social media everywhere. And so in this way, I think that you have to really stop making it about the algorithm, or the goal shouldn't be to beat the algorithm, but to really build new connections with your ideal customer and or continue to make connections with your current customers, right? And I think that once we look at it and we, lay down our expectations and we just come to our social media with the outlook to connect with our audience, with our collectors, with our community and fellow creatives, then we will just be a happier person all around. And I will say that one of the things that has helped me in this whole balancing of social media, because Who hasn't sat down and been like, I'm going to work on my business, and then 3 hours later, you realize somehow you got sucked into Instagram and you've just been scrolling and scrolling and sucked into this vortex of time. And you most likely don't feel so great about yourself. You maybe during that time have started comparing yourself to other artists. Oh my gosh, look at what this person is doing. I can't believe that they sold that painting. And then you start feeling about this small because you're comparing yourself to what someone else's success looks like. And maybe you're not seeing all of their struggles and whatever. And one of the things that has been helping me is to really just set boundaries on the time that I'm spending in social media and starting to recognize, you know what? I don't feel so great when I consume so much social media. I need to get out into nature. I need to be creating content for my audience. I feel so much happier when I've been like making YouTube videos all day as opposed to sitting on social media and scrolling. And I think that's one of the things that I don't like about Instagram anymore is that when I go to the platform to actually create the content, I get sucked in and end up spending way too much time there. And I never feel better about myself, right? And so I think that you have to use it strategically, but you also have to watch your consumption time versus your creation time. And I just feel happier when I've been creating art, when I've been making more art, and when I am creating content for my people here. No, Instagram is not completely dead, but it's no longer the whole story anymore. It's no longer the one go-to place where I go to promote my business. And I think that you have to realize that your art deserves a bigger stage and one that isn't dependent on whether the algorithm likes you today or tomorrow. So I encourage you to start planting seeds somewhere new, and you'll be surprised how much more sustainable your creative business can feel. So if you found this video helpful, I would love for you to subscribe. I like to share content that helps artists go from hobby artists to professional artists. And no, I'm not an expert. I haven't arrived. I am just sharing things that I am learning along my journey. And maybe I'm just a few steps ahead of you, but I am happy to share with you the things that I'm learning. And maybe I can learn some things from you too. But I want to mention that one of the things that I have done in my business is I have just opened up a community for like-minded artists who are tired of being dependent on the Instagram algorithm, who want to have creative conversations every single month. And so I have a membership community that's called the Flourish and Flow Society with artists who I like to mentor. We meet twice a month on Zoom where where I cover subjects like this: how to start a YouTube channel, how to release a collection of art, and not only that, how to find clarity around your business around what is the message behind your art, because I think so many of us have we run into this dead end and we don't know how to communicate about our art. So I go over topics like this in our Zoom calls, and then I give one-on-one feedback and we support each other as artists. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, if you want to grow with me and learn with other artists who are trying to build a creative business, and I like to keep it real, right? I'm not going to just, talk rainbows and sunshines all the time. There are absolute real challenges that come with running a creative business. And not only that, it's about building something sustainable. I don't know how many artists I've talked to over the years who start building a creative business. They might start an online store, start, selling their art. Maybe they have prints and paintings that they sell, and they get to this place where they might start making a living in their business, but then they quickly burn out because it's not sustainable. And so I help artists build in such a way where they are paying attention to their own creative practice, their own creative flow, and not neglecting those things that make them an artist and make them excited to create still. So I believe that we can have flourishing art businesses, but we also have to be strategic in the way that we set our businesses up so that it's sustainable. And what I just talked about today is just one of the many ways that I recommend having sustainable businesses. And that is maybe not spending as much time on Instagram to only have all of that time wasted, but utilizing some of these other platforms. So I will put the link to the Flourish and Flow Society in the caption, and I would love to see you there. We have 2 Zoom call meetings a month, as well as monthly content with probably a good, 5 to 10 hours of videos like this one for you to watch on your own time frame. And all the Zoom calls are recorded as well. And I love supporting artists and helping them build a business that is sustainable. Okay, well, thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you think about Instagram and some of these other platforms in the comments.